My name's Devin Asay. I'm a research fellow in the Office of Digital Humanities, and I teach a class, among other things. I teach a class in developing instructional applications for humanities and other non-technical majors. Today I'm going to talk about my experience in what we call flipping the classroom. So the first question, there's a couple of questions that come up right away, and the first is, why are you even teaching programming classes in the humanities? Well, I think the short answer is for the same reason that they teach technical writing in technical majors, and that is programming we see as a literacy that can help students in a lot of ways. The computers in the humanities minor, or CHUM as we affectionately call it, will be changed in the fall to digital humanities and technology. But it has two major thrusts. The first is to explore the ways in which modern digital technologies affect research and learning in the humanities, such as languages, literature, and philosophy. And the second thrust is applied and practical, teaching applied computing skills, including the fundamentals of programming to humanities majors. My course, called Instructional Applications Programming, teaches students to create instructional programs and tools using a high-level development tool called live code. This is a visual development environment that's descended from the popular HyperCard program from Apple. And one of the premises for me in teaching the fundamentals of programming to our students is that in addition to being a valuable skill in itself, it also teaches them an important new way of critical thinking and analyzing complex problems. So that is, the skills that are required to analyze and solve a complex computing task are also germane to analyzing and understanding complex ideas in human communication and thought. So that's a little bit about why we're even teaching technology skills to humanities students. Second question is, what is flipping? What are you talking about, flipping? This was a slang term when I was a student, but, this is my obligatory pop culture reference. In the flipped classroom, acquisition of new content takes place out of class. So the students spend time out of class reading lessons, reading about what they're going to apply in class. The application of knowledge through hands-on exercises and assignments takes place in class. So essentially, the old lecture homework model is flipped on its head, and we ask them to acquire the new knowledge out of class and apply the new knowledge in class. Why did I decide to do this? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, my background as a graduate student in my early career was teaching language. I was in Russian languages and literature in graduate school. So that's how we teach language. We ask the students to do some reading and learning on their own out of class, and then in class, the teacher will spend the time doing the things that the teacher does best, and that is teaching the advanced communicative skills that you need while you're learning a foreign language. Students also asked for it. I won't take time to read all of these, but these are some comments from some of my past, before I switched to this model, some of the comments from my students. This student wasn't exactly asking for that explicitly, but had a hard time figuring out the technology. This student said, well, it would be really beneficial to be able to work on these exercises in class where somebody could come and help us, tell us what we're doing wrong. There was a level of frustration out of class. This student, again, thought there was a good mix of instruction and hands-on work, and that the hands-on is really the only way to learn how to do these skills. How did I implement it? The hint here is gradually. The first thing, as many of us did when the web first hit, we said, oh, this is great, I can distribute my lecture notes on the web. So I created notes based on my lectures that the students could then refer to after class. So the first thing I did when I decided to flip was, I'm going to just redefine my syllabus and say, instead of these being lecture notes, these are readings that you should do before class. And I will have a quiz at the beginning of every class on what you read. You have to be very consistent, make sure that the quizzes are germane and challenging. Secondly, I reworked the in-class curriculum to include daily, meaningful hands-on exercises. And even in some cases, moving what had been homework to the in-class time. Thirdly, I developed, and this was actually maybe the most time-consuming phase for me. When I used to do this as a lecture, I would have lots and lots of exercises, I would have lots and lots of examples that I would show to the students to illustrate what I was talking about. If they only were reading that new material, they would be losing a lot of the examples. So I decided to create an electronic textbook that provided the live interactive demonstrations to accompany the readings. Now, I could have put this all up on the web using JavaScript, but my JavaScript skills were pretty meager, and it would have been an immense undertaking. So I decided to eat my own dog food, and myself. There we go. And I used the programming tool that I was teaching to create an electronic textbook that was online. It was easy to update. It gave me a chance to give feedback to students. It allowed them to upload and download. And it also allows me an easy way to refine materials each year. I call this, very cleverly, the Chum 210 application. It's a free download for my students. It's got interactive lessons. It's internet connected, as I said, for ease of update and other things. Here are just a couple of screenshots from this application. The student logs in, and the first thing they see is a table of contents that will map out the entire course for them. But they also will see, with the little icons, their progress through the course. They can click on those icons and see exactly how much time they've spent reading. In the case of assignments, it will show whether it's been turned in and whether I've graded it and the feedback that I've given them. Here's an example of some of the interactive examples that I've built right into the lesson. So they would read about basic programming concepts, including sequence of commands, which is fundamental but important. And then I give them a very simple example that they think at first glance is really easy, but almost inevitably they do it wrong, and it's an opportunity to teach them that, well, in this particular example, you've actually got to do the steps in reverse order from what you think for it to work properly. Here's an example of a slide where I'm teaching some ways in which looping as a programming concept can be applied. And so I have this visual example. So it's a way to sort of give them this visual tie-in to an abstract concept. At the end of each lesson, I provide a comprehension check to help them reassure themselves that they're understanding what they read. And finally, for assignments, they have a way to turn this in online. They can simply drag their assignment here. They can check to see if it's successfully been uploaded and so forth. So how did the students like it? Well, basically, they didn't bat an eyelash when I explained the concept. Today's students just seem to take to the concept naturally. What about more formal evaluations? Was there an effect on student evaluations? The answer is not as much as I'd hoped. Let's look at a couple of graphs. So I went over the last 10 years or so and I graphed out some of the questions that I thought were germane to assessing whether or not this was effective. Overall course, overall instructor, amount learned, materials and activities effective, well organized. And I was a tiny bit chagrined to see, well, it didn't really change. Maybe there's a slight upward trend. But as one of my colleagues pointed out, well, it didn't go down, did it? So I'll take that as a net positive. Here's another set of questions that I looked at. Valuable time in class, valuable time out of class. Interestingly enough, it seems to me that the time spent out of class, there's a little bit of a trend upward where they felt like the way that they're having to learn things on their own and then come to class and do them is valuable. Very quickly, lessons learned. Have a TA in class if possible, because that suddenly becomes a time when everybody wants your attention. And so having that extra help is good. I talked about being consistent and demanding with quizzes. Homework still needs to be done outside of class because there simply isn't enough time to do it all in class. So traditional consultation and TA hours are important. There's a direct correlation between time spent on class prep and performance. You've got to stress that to students. Finally, I think that the flipped classroom for what I teach is really the best approach. I believe students learn more, and that as a teacher, I'm better in touch with progress of each student. If you decide to adopt this model, be prepared to invest significant time in adapting your curriculum and instructional materials to support it. That was one of the main reasons the transition took me several years, and I know that there will always be refinements to be made. Let me just insert parenthetically that one of the things that was talked about with the Learning Suite was implied was that there is a public API, a programmer's interface. If I could interface my software into the Learning Suite web services, that would make it even more effective for me as a teacher. Thank you, and we'll go on to the next topic.